The crack of steel and the groan of timber echoed through the valley like the sound of a dying beast. I stood frozen on the ridge, my heart lodged in my throat, as the bridge my family had built, a $5 million marvel of private engineering, buckled under the relentless assault of heavy machinery. A bulldozer, painted in garish HOA colors, rammed into the foundation beams again and again until the span collapsed into the rushing river below. Water swallowed it in seconds, carrying away planks, steel, and history. And at the center of it all stood Karen, her bloated frame perched triumphantly on the bulldozer seat, arms raised like a dictator celebrating conquest. She wore her usual uniform floral blouse stretched across her shoulders, oversized sunglasses that barely masked her smug grin, and a clipboard tucked under one arm. "You can't build a monstrosity like this without HOA approval," she bellowed over the roar of the engine. "This bridge is a violation of every aesthetic code. Consider it condemned." My fists trembled at my sides. This wasn't just any bridge, it was my legacy, my dream, my family's investment into connecting two vital halves of our land. It wasn't in her subdivision. It wasn't under her authority. It wasn't even visible from her neighborhood. And yet here she was, reducing years of work to rubble because her ego couldn't stand not being in control. The cost, the history, the sheer audacity of her destruction hit me like a blow to the chest. Neighbors had gathered by then, drawn by the sound of metal snapping and water raging. Gasps filled the air as the structure collapsed completely, leaving nothing but twisted remains floating downstream. One man whispered, "That bridge was worth millions." Another muttered, "She's lost her damn mind." Karen ignored them all, climbing down from the machine and slapping dust from her hands like a butcher done with a kill. She spotted me on the ridge and shouted, "Send me the bill if you like. I won't stand in court. HOA rulings are final." That was the moment something inside me cracked. I wasn't going to let her walk away with her smug smile and clipboard victory. She had taken something irreplaceable from me, and she would learn that some legacies fight back. I stormed down the ridge, veins burning, but instead of confronting her head-on, I turned toward the waterway. The river was high, swollen from recent rains, and I knew every inch of its banks. Karen's farm stretched along the opposite side, a flat expanse of corn and soy that relied on fragile drainage systems. Without that bridge's careful design, water had only one new direction to go straight into her fields. By nightfall, with Karen still parading her little victory across town, I redirected the flow through temporary gates my crew had installed for construction safety. It took only minutes for the river to shift. Hours later, water pooled in her fields, rising, spreading, turning her neat rows into a swampy wasteland. By morning, her farm looked like a lake, the very earth drowned beneath her arrogance. Her scream echoed across the valley when she saw it. She ran out in a bathrobe, mud soaking her slippers, waving her arms at me from across the water. "You did this, you criminal. I'll have you arrested." That's when the twist arrived. Two cars with flashing lights roared down her driveway. For a heartbeat, I thought real officers had come. But as the men stepped out, I noticed their mismatched uniforms, badges that gleamed suspiciously cheap, and belts carrying nothing but plastic holsters. They strutted toward me, barking orders. "Stand down, sir. You're under arrest for destruction of community property." Karen cackled behind them, arms folded across her wide chest. "You're finished." I called in reinforcements. "This is what happens when you defy me." But my gut told me these weren't officers, they were fakes. Imposters hired or manipulated by Karen to scare me into submission. Their patches read Community Patrol, stitched unevenly, and their boots didn't match regulation. They were a farce just like her authority. I raised my voice so the neighbors watching from the ridge could hear. "These men aren't police. They're imposters. This is another one of Karen's scams." Murmurs rose, phones lifted, cameras zoomed in. The so-called patrol shifted uncomfortably under the lens of public exposure. One stammered, "We reauthorized." But his voice faltered as a sheriff's cruiser pulled up behind them, lights cutting through the morning haze. Deputy Sheriff Ramirez stepped out, his real badge gleaming in the sun. He looked at Karen, then at the imposters, and his jaw tightened. "Impersonating officers is a felony. You three are coming with me." Karen shrieked, lunging forward. "No, they work for me. This is HOA enforcement." Ramirez didn't flinch. You've crossed too many lines, Karen. Destroying private property, fraud, impersonation. You're done. The neighbors erupted in cheers as Ramirez cuffed the imposters and radioed for backup. Karen screamed until her face turned purple, her fat hands flailing wildly as deputies led her away. She kept shouting about her power, her rules, her HOA authority, but no one listened. The woman who destroyed my bridge now stood on the brink of losing everything she thought she ruled. And as I watched her dragged into the cruiser, I felt no triumph, only justice. She had taken my bridge, but in her arrogance, she had built the path to her own downfall. The courthouse was packed so tightly it felt like the entire county had turned up for the trial. The viral videos of Karen's destruction and the phony community patrol had spread faster than wildfire, drawing reporters, bloggers, and families she had wronged for years. The weight of public outrage was heavy in that courtroom, hanging over Karen like storm clouds ready to burst. I sat at the plaintiff's table, papers stacked before me, my heart pounding with the memory of my bridge collapsing into the river. On the other side, Karen filled her chair like a general at war, her bulk spilling into the aisle, her chin raised defiantly, as though the entire proceeding were beneath her. Her attorney, a slick-haired man in an ill-fitting pinstripe suit, tried to open with a grand defense. Ladies and gentlemen, this bridge was an eyesore, a hazard, and a violation of community standards. Mrs. Whitmore acted only to preserve safety and integrity. He said the word integrity, like it might erase the footage of Karen in her bulldozer, grinning as steel snapped. Judge Robinson wasn't having it. Counselor, remind me, was the bridge located inside the HOA's jurisdiction? The attorney stammered. Well, technically, no. But its proximity, answer the question. Was it inside HOA territory? Pause stretched. No, Your Honor. Then explain how your client thought she had the legal authority to demolish it. Silence. The gallery erupted in low laughter. Karen flushed crimson, beads of sweat rolling down her thick neck. When it was my turn, I rose and held up the blueprints of the bridge, stamped by engineers, approved by the county. This wasn't a vanity project, I said, voice steady despite the storm inside me. This bridge was designed to connect two halves of farmland, to serve as infrastructure for generations. It was insured, certified, and worth over $5 million. My family didn't just lose steel and wood that day, we lost legacy, history, and livelihood. And it wasn't an act of nature or accident. It was deliberate destruction. The courtroom fell silent except for the shuffling of papers. Then the county clerk took the stand, testifying how Karen had filed false claims stating the bridge impacted sightlines of the HOA and demanded demolition. He produced the filings, stamped with her signature, blatant fraud. Deputy Sheriff Ramirez followed, describing how he found the fake community patrol men in costumes, Karen shouting that they were her enforcers. He detailed their cheap badges, their terrified confessions that Karen had paid them cash to scare the landowner. Each revelation was a nail in her coffin. But the twist came when one of her own board members, Mr. Caldwell, a wiry man who had always stood at her side, asked to speak. His hands trembled as he lifted a folder thick with documents. I can't keep silent anymore, he said, voice breaking. Karen forced us to sign off on liens and fines that were never real. She threatened to ruin us if we refused. And she skimmed tens of thousands from the HOA account into her personal farm budget. The gasp from the gallery shook the room. Karen bolted upright, her chair screeching against the floor. Lies. All lies. They're jealous of my leadership. Her voice cracked, desperation breaking through her mask. I protected this community. The judge's gavel slammed down. Mrs. Whitmore, sit down or you'll be removed. Her attorney buried his face in his hands. The jury looked horrified. And in that moment, Karen wasn't a leader anymore, she was a spectacle, exposed and unraveling. When the verdict came, it was swift. Guilty of property destruction. Guilty of fraud. Guilty of impersonating law enforcement through hired imposters. The judge's voice thundered as he read the sentence. Full restitution for the bridge, fines, and a criminal referral to the district attorney's office. Karen's jaw dropped, her bloated face pale with shock. Deputies stepped forward, cuffs gleaming. She shrieked, thrashing as they bound her wrists. "You can't do this. I am the HOA president. This whole county will regret this day." But her threats rang hollow. The gallery rose in applause, neighbors hugging, some crying tears of relief. People who had been fined for wind chimes or threatened over garden sheds finally saw justice crash down on the tyrant who had ruled them with fear. Outside, reporters swarmed me with microphones. "How does it feel, Mr. Grayson, to see her finally face justice?" I looked into the cameras, my voice steady. "She destroyed my bridge. But today proved she couldn't destroy our community. Bullies only win when good people stay silent. We didn't, and now the truth stands higher than any bridge." Over the following weeks, Karen's empire collapsed. The HOA board dissolved under state investigation. Residents came together, forming a cooperative based on fairness instead of fear. My bridge project, though scarred, received county support for rebuilding, this time with the community cheering it on. And Karen? She sat in a cell, stripped of her title, her farm repossessed to pay restitution. The woman who once strutted with a clipboard and fake laws now had nothing but the echoes of her own arrogance. I returned to the river one evening, standing where the bridge once rose. The water rushed strong, golden in the sunset, and I could almost hear my grandfather's voice. "Steel can bend, wood can break, but justice lasts." And I wonder if it had been your bridge, your land, your family legacy, would you have fought back? Or would you have let fear dictate your future? Because in the end, the only thing that stood between Karen's destruction and our justice was the decision to rise. So what do you think? Was I right to flood her farm and fight her in court, or should I have taken another path?